Chapter 42. Earthquake. So Chief, Ostap asked as the concessionaires approached the village of Sioni, what do you think we can hustle in this scrubby area, perched 2 versts above sea level? Ippolit Matveyevich remained silent. The only way he could think to earn a living was begging, but up here on these winding mountain roads and ledges, there was no one to beg from. Actually, there was begging here, but it was a special kind, alpine begging. Every time a bus or car sped past the village, kids would run out and perform a few steps of the Norian Lezginka right in front of the moving vehicle. After their performance, they'd chase after the car, yelling, "Give money, money give." Passengers would toss out small coins and continue their ascent toward the cross pass. A holy racket, Ostap said. No major investment needed. Income isn't huge, but in our situation, it's valuable. Round 2 o'clock on the second day of their journey, Ippolit Matveyevich, under the watchful eye of the master strategist, performed his first dance for the passing tourists. It resembled a mazurka, but the passengers, jaded by the wild beauty of the Caucasus, mistook it for a lezginka and rewarded him with 3 kopecks. When the next vehicle, a bus heading from Tbilisi to Vladikavkaz, approached, he shouted angrily, "Give money, money give." Laughing passengers generously rewarded his jumping. Ostap collected 30 kopecks from the dusty road, but then the Sioni kids pelted the competition with a hail of stones. Fleeing the barrage, the travelers quickly headed to a nearby all, where they spent their earnings on cheese and shiraki bread. Concessionaires spent their days like this. They slept in mountain saklias. On the 4th day, they descended the winding highway into the Kaishur Valley. Here, the sun was hot, and the companions' bones, thoroughly chilled at the cross pass, quickly warmed up. The dark, cold cliffs of the Daryal Pass were replaced by the greenery and domesticity of the deep valley. The travelers walked above the Aragva River, descending into a valley populated by people, abundant with livestock and food. Here they could beg for something, earn something, or simply steal something. This was Transcaucasia. The now cheerful concessionaires walked faster. In Pasinori, a hot, prosperous village with 2 hotels and several duck-inns, the friends begged for shiraki and settled down in the bushes opposite the Hotel France, which had a garden and 2 bear cubs on chains. They enjoyed the warmth, the tasty bread, and their well-deserved rest. However, their rest was soon disturbed by the screech of car horns, the sound of new tires on the Flint Highway, and joyful shouts. The friends peeked out. 3 identical brand-new cars pulled up to the France in a line. The cars stopped silently. Persitsky jumped out of the first car. Justice and Daily Life magazine's reporter followed, smoothing his dusty hair. Then members of the Machine Tool newspaper's automobile club poured out of all the cars. "Pit stop," Persitsky shouted. "Waiter, 15 shashliks." Sleepy figures stirred in the France, and the cries of a ram being dragged to the kitchen by its legs could be heard. "Don't you recognize that young man?" Ostap asked. "That's a reporter from Scriabin, one of the critics of our banner, but look at the style they arrived in. What does this mean?" Ostap approached the shashlik eaters and bowed elegantly to Persitsky. "Bonjour," the reporter said. "Where have I seen you before, my dear comrade?" "Ah, yes, the artist from Scriabin, am I right?" Ostap pressed his hand to his heart and bowed politely. Wait, Persitsky continued, possessing a reporter's sharp memory. "Weren't you the one who was run over by a cab horse in Sverdlov Square in Moscow?" Indeed, and in your apt phrase, I supposedly got away with a slight scare." "And what are you doing here, working in the artistic field?" "No, I'm here for sightseeing." "On foot?" "On foot, experts say that traveling the Georgian military road by car is just plain foolishness." "Not always foolishness, my dear, not always. We, for example, aren't traveling so foolishly. The cars, as you can see, are our own, I emphasize our own, collective, direct route Moscow to Tbilisi. The gas costs next to nothing. Comfort and speed of travel. Soft Springs, Europe." "Where did you get all this?" Ostap asked enviously. "Did you win 100,000? "Not 100, but 50. In a lottery. On a bond belonging to the automobile club." "I see," Ostap said, "and you bought cars with that money." "As you can see." "Maybe you need a supervisor. I know a young man doesn't drink." "What kind of supervisor?" "Well, you know, overall management, business advice, hands-on training using a comprehensive method. Eh? I understand you. No, we don't need one." "Don't need one?" "No, unfortunately, and we don't need an artist either." "In that case, lend me 10 rubles. "Avdidian," Persitsky said, "be so kind as to give this citizen 3 rubles on my account. No receipt needed. This person is not accountable." "That's extremely little," Ostap remarked, "but I'll take it. I understand the difficulty of your situation. Of course, if you had won 100,000, you probably would have lent me a whole 5, but you only won a measly 50,000 rubles and 0 kopecks. In any case, thank you." Bender politely tipped his hat. Persitsky politely tipped his hat. Bender bowed charmingly. Persitsky returned an even more charming bow. Bender waved a greeting, and Persitsky, sitting at the wheel, waved back. But Persitsky drove off in a beautiful car toward the shining distance in the company of cheerful friends, while the master strategist remained on the dusty road with his idiot companion. Did you see that flash? Ostap asked Ippolit Matveyevich. Transcaucasian Auto Trade or the private company, Motor, Vorobyaninov inquired matter-of-factly, having become well acquainted with all types of vehicles on the road in the past few days. I was about to go dance for them. You'll become completely dull-witted soon, my poor friend. What Transcaucasian Auto Trade? These people listen, Kisa, woe on 50,000 rubles. You can see for yourself, Kisa, how cheerful they are and how much mechanical junk they've bought. When we get our money, we'll spend it much more rationally, won't we? And the friends, dreaming about what they would buy when they became rich, left Pasinori. Ippolit Matveyevich vividly imagined buying new socks and traveling abroad. Ostap's dreams were grander. His projects were grandiose, either damming the Blue Nile or opening a gambling mansion in Riga with branches in all the border states. On the third day before lunch, after passing through the boring and dusty places of Ananur, Dushit, and Silkani, the travelers approached Mtsketa, the ancient capital of Georgia. Here, the Kura River turned toward Tbilisi. In the evening, the travelers passed the ZAGS, the Zimoavchalsk hydroelectric station. Glass, water, and electricity sparkled with various lights. All of this was reflected and trembled in the fast-flowing Kura. Here, the concessionaires befriended a peasant who brought them to Tbilisi on a cart around 11 o'clock in the evening, at the very hour when the evening coolness draws the residents of the Georgian capital, weary after a stuffy day, out into the streets. Not a bad town, Ostap said, stepping onto Shoda Rustavli Avenue, you know, Kisa. Suddenly, Ostap, without finishing his sentence, rushed after a man, caught up with him about 10 steps away, and began talking animatedly with him. Then he quickly returned and poked Ippolit Matveyevich in the side. You know who that is? He whispered quickly. It's the Odessa Bagel Cooperative Moscow Crackers, Citizen Kisliarsky. Let's go to him. Now you're once again, paradoxically, a giant of thought and the father of Russian democracy. Don't forget to puff out your cheeks and twitch your mustache. Ah, damn it, what luck, fortune. If I don't squeeze 500 rubles out of him right now, spit in my eye, let's go, let's go. Indeed, some distance away from the concessionaire stood Kisliarsky, pale blue with fear, in a Cheviot suit and a canadier hat. You seem to be acquainted, Ostap said in a whisper. Here is a person close to the emperor, a giant of thought and the father of Russian democracy. Don't pay attention to his suit. It's for disguise. Take us somewhere immediately. We need to talk. Kisliarsky, who had come to the Caucasus to escape the Starogorod turmoil, was completely overwhelmed. Muttering some nonsense about stagnation in the bagel business, Kisliarsky put the frightening acquaintances into a carriage with silver-plated spokes and a footboard and took them to Mount David. They ascended to the top of this restaurant-topped mountain via funicular. Tbilisi, in thousands of lights, slowly crawled into the underworld. The conspirators rose straight to the stars. Restaurant tables were set up right on the grass. A Caucasian orchestra rumbled softly, and a little girl, under the happy gaze of her parents, spontaneously danced the lezginka between the tables. Order something, Bender urged. At the command of the experienced Kisliarsky, wine, herbs, and salty Georgian cheese were served. And something to eat, Ostap said. If you knew, dear Mr. Kisliarsky, what Ippolit Matveyevich and I had to endure today, you would marvel at our courage. Again, Kisliarsky thought in despair. My torments are starting again, and why didn't I go to Crimea? I clearly wanted to go to Crimea, and Henrietta advised it. But he obediently ordered 2 shashliks and turned his obliging face to Ostap. So, Ostap said, looking around and lowering his voice, in a nutshell, we've been followed for 2 months, and probably tomorrow an ambush will be waiting for us at the safe house. We'll have to shoot back. Kisliarsky's cheeks turned silver. We are glad, Ostap continued, to meet a devoted fighter for the homeland in this troubled situation. Yes, Ippolit Matveyevich proudly drawled, remembering the hungry fervor with which he had danced the lezginka not far from Sioni. He stuffed his mouth with cheese and herbs. He happily belched wine fumes to prolong the pleasure. Ostap shot him an angry glance, and Ippolit Matveyevich choked on a green onion. Yes, Ostap whispered, we hope to strike the enemy with your help. I'll give you a parabellum. No need, Kisliarsky said firmly. The next minute it became clear that the chairman of the Stock Exchange Committee was unable to participate in tomorrow's battle. He was very sorry, but he couldn't. He was unfamiliar with military affairs. That's why he was chosen as the chairman of the Stock Exchange Committee. He was in complete despair, but to save the life of the father of Russian democracy, he himself was an old Octoberist. He was ready to provide possible financial assistance. You are a true friend of the fatherland, Ostap solemnly said, washing down the fragrant shashlik with sweet Kipyani wine. 500 rubles can save the father of Russian democracy. Tell me, Kisliarsky asked plaintively, can't 200 rubles save the giant of thought? Ostap couldn't resist and enthusiastically kicked Ippolit Matveyevich under the table. I think, Ippolit Matveyevich said, that bargaining is inappropriate here. He immediately received a kick in the thigh, which meant, bravo, Kisa, bravo, that's what school means. Kisliarsky heard the voice of the giant of thought for the first time in his life. He was so struck by this circumstance that he immediately handed Ostap 500 rubles. After that, he paid the bill and, leaving the friends at the table, left due to a headache. Half an hour later, he sent his wife in Starogorod a telegram. Following your advice, going Crimea just in case, prepare basket. Long deprivations that Ostap Bender had experienced demanded immediate compensation. Therefore, that same evening, the master strategist got drunk on the restaurant mountain to the point of paralysis and almost fell out of the funicular car on the way to the hotel. The next day, he fulfilled his long-standing dream. He bought a wonderful gray suit with an apple pattern. It was hot in this suit, but he still wore it, sweating profusely. A white peak suit and a sailor's cap with the gold stamp of an unknown yacht club were bought for Vorobyaninov in the ready-made clothing store of TIF Corporation. In this attire, Ippolit Matveyevich resembled a merchant admiral amateur. His posture straightened. His gait became firm. Ah, Bender said, high class. If I were a woman, I would give such a courageous, handsome man like you an 8% discount from the usual price. In this form we can mingle. Do you know how to mingle, Kisa? Comrade Bender, Vorobyaninov insisted. What about the chair? We need to find out what's happening with the theater. Oh ho, Ostap retorted, dancing with a chair in the large Moorish room of the Hotel Orient. Don't teach me how to live. I'm angry now. I have money, but I'm generous. I'm giving you 20 rubles in 3 days to plunder the city. I'm like Suvorov. Plunder the city, Kisa, have fun. And Ostap, swaying his hips, sang in a fast tempo. Evening chimes, evening chimes. How many thoughts they bring to mind. Friends caroused for a whole week. Vorobyaninov's admiral's suit was covered with multicolored wine apples, and the apples on Ostap's suit blurred and merged into one large rainbow apple. Hello, Ostap said on the 8th morning, having decided to read Dawn of the East with a hangover. Listen, you drunkard, to what smart people write in the newspapers. Listen. Theater news. Yesterday, September 3, after completing its tour in Tbilisi, the Moscow Columbus Theater left for a tour in Yalta. The theater plans to stay in Crimea until the beginning of the winter season in Moscow. Aha, I told you, Vorobyaninov said. What did you tell me? Ostap snapped. However, he was embarrassed. This oversight was very unpleasant for him. Instead of finishing the treasure hunt in Tbilisi, they now had to move to the Crimean Peninsula. Ostap immediately got down to business. Tickets to Bottom were bought, and seats were reserved in the second class of the steamer Pestel, which departed from Bottom for Odessa on September 7 at 11 p.m. Moscow time. On the night of September 10 to 11, when the Pestel, without calling at Anapa due to storm, turned into the open sea and set course directly for Yalta, Ippolit Matveyevich, who had been vomiting all day and had only now fallen asleep, had a dream. He dreamed that he was standing on the balcony of his Starogorod house in his admiral's suit and knew that the crowd standing below was waiting for something from him. A large crane lowered a pig with black apples to his feet. The janitor Tikhon came in a suit jacket and, grabbing the pig by its hind legs, said, "Oh, blast it all, does Nymph give a brush?" Dagger appeared in Ippolit Matveyevich's hands. He struck the pig in the side with it, and diamonds poured out of the large, wide wound and began to jump on the cement. They jumped and clattered louder and louder, and in the end their clatter became unbearable and terrible. Ippolit Matveyevich woke up from the impact of a wave against the porthole. He approached Yalta in calm weather on an exhausting sunny morning. Recovered from seasickness, the leader flaunted himself on the bow near the bell, decorated with cast Slavic ligature. Cheerful Yalta lined its tiny shops and floating restaurants along the shore. Carriages with velvet seats under canvas, carved awnings, cars and buses of Crimean Curso, and the Crimean Chauffeur Association stood on the pier. Brick-colored girls twirled open umbrellas and waved handkerchiefs. Friends were the first to step onto the hot embankment. At the sight of the concessionaires, a man in a Cheviot suit emerged from the crowd of greeters and onlookers and quickly walked toward the exit of the port area. But it was too late. The hunting eye of the master strategist quickly recognized the Cheviot man. "Wait, Vorobyaninov," Ostap shouted. And he rushed forward so quickly that he caught up with the Cheviot man 10 steps from the exit. Ostap instantly returned with 100 rubles. "Won't give more, however, I didn't insist, or he wouldn't have anything to return home with." And indeed, Kisliarsky fled in a car to Sevastopol that very hour, and from there, third class, home to Starogorod. The concessionaire spent the whole day in the hotel, sitting naked on the floor and running to the bathroom for a shower every minute, but the water flowed warm, like bad tea. There was no escape from the heat. It seemed that Yalta would melt and flow into the sea. By 8 o'clock in the evening, cursing all the chairs in the world, the companions put on their hot boots and went to the theater. Marriage was playing. Exhausted by the heat, Stepan, standing on his hands, almost fell. Agafia Tikhonovna ran along the wire, holding an umbrella with the inscription, "I want Podkolsin," in her sweaty hands. At this moment, like all day, she wanted only one thing: cold water with ice. The audience also wanted to drink. Therefore, or perhaps because the sight of Stepan devouring hot scrambled eggs was disgusting, the audience did not like the performance. The concessionaires were satisfied because their chair, along with 3 new lush Rococo semi-Creole chairs, was in place. Hiding in one of the boxes, the friends patiently waited for the end of the incredibly drawn-out performance. The audience finally dispersed, and the actors ran to cool off. No one remained in the theater except the member shareholders of the concession enterprise. All living things ran out into the street under the finally pouring fresh rain. "Follow me, Kisa," Ostap commanded. "If anything, we are provincials who couldn't find a way out of the theater." They made their way behind the stage and, striking matches, but still bumping into the hydraulic press, examined the entire stage. The master strategist ran up the stairs to the prop room. "Come here," he shouted from above. Vorobyaninov, waving his arms, rushed upstairs. "See," Ostap said, lighting a match. The corner of a gam chair and a sector of an umbrella with the inscription, "I want," emerged from the darkness. Here is our future, present, and past. Light the matches, Kisa, and I'll open it." And Ostap reached into his pocket for his tools. "Well," he said, reaching for the chair, "another match, Chief." A match flared, and strangely enough, the chair jumped to the side on its own, and suddenly, before the eyes of the amazed concessionaires, fell through the floor. "Mama!" Ippolit Matveyevich shouted, flying to the wall, although he had no desire to do so. The glass shattered with a crash, and the umbrella with the inscription, "I want Podkolsin," caught by a whirlwind, flew out the window toward the sea. Ostap lay on the floor, lightly crushed by plywood shields. It was 12 hours and 14 minutes. This was the first shock of the Great Crimean Earthquake of 1927, a 9-point shock which caused countless disasters to the entire peninsula, snatched the treasure from the hands of the concessionaires. "Comrade Bender, what is this?" Ippolit Matveyevich shouted in horror. Ostap was beside himself, an earthquake standing in his way. This was the only such case in his rich practice. "What is it?" Vorobyaninov wailed. Cries ringing and whispers came from the street. "It's what we need to run out into the street immediately, before we're buried by a wall. Quick, quick, give me your hand hat." And they rushed to the exit. To their surprise, a whole and unharmed gam chair lay on its back at the door leading from the stage to the alley. Issuing a dog-like squeal, Ippolit Matveyevich grabbed it with a death grip. "Give me the pliers," he shouted to Ostap. "You mangy idiot," Ostap groaned. "The ceiling is about to collapse and he's going crazy here. Get out into the air quickly." "Pliers," the crazed Ippolit Matveyevich roared. "Well, to hell with you, perish here with your chair, and I value my life as a memory." With these words, Ostap rushed to the door. Ippolit Matveyevich barked and, grabbing the chair, ran after Ostap. As soon as they found themselves in the middle of the alley, the ground shook sickeningly under their feet, tiles fell from the roof of the theater, and the remains of the hydraulic press already lay in the place that the concessionaires had just left. "Well, now give me the chair," Bender said coolly. "I see you're already tired of holding it." "I won't give it," Ippolit Matveyevich shrieked. "What's this, a mutiny on the ship? Give me the chair, do you hear?" "It's my chair," Vorobyaninov cackled, drowning out the moans, weeping and crackling coming from everywhere. "In that case, get your fee, you old galosh." And Ostap struck Vorobyaninov on the neck with his copper palm. At the same moment, a fire train with torches rushed through the alley, and in their flickering light, Ippolit Matveyevich saw such a terrible expression on Bender's face that he instantly obeyed and gave up the chair. "Well, now it's good," Ostap said, catching his breath. "The mutiny has been suppressed, and now take the chair and carry it after me. You are responsible to me for the integrity of the thing. Even if there is a 50-point shock, the chair must be preserved. Understood?" "Understood." All night the concessionaires wandered with the panicked crowds, not daring, like everyone else, to enter the abandoned houses, waiting for new shocks. Dawn, when the fear subsided a little, Ostap chose a place near which there were no walls that could collapse, nor people who could interfere, and began to open the chair. The results of the opening amazed both concessionaires. There was nothing in the chair. Ippolit Matveyevich, who could not withstand all the shocks of the night and morning, laughed a rat-like laugh. Immediately after this, the third shock rang out. The earth opened up and swallowed the gam chair, spared by the first earthquake and torn apart by people, the flowers of which smiled at the sun that had risen in the cloudy dust. Ippolit Matveyevich got on all fours and, turning his crumpled face to the muddy crimson solar disk, howled. Listening to him, the master strategist fainted. When he woke up, he saw Vorobyaninov's chin, overgrown with lilac bristles, next to him. Ippolit Matveyevich was also unconscious. In the end, Ostap said in the voice of a recovering typhoid patient, "Now we have 100 chances out of 100. The last chair, at the word chair, Ippolit Matveyevich woke up, disappeared in the freight yard of the October railway station, but by no means fell through the earth. What's the matter? The meeting continues. Somewhere bricks were falling with a crash. A ship's siren cried out plaintively. A bareheaded woman in a petticoat ran down the middle of the street.